difficult because of insecurity. There was shooting all the time. We couldn't do anything but go from the hotel to the office, which was next door, but we had to take a car, and it just ended up being a big headache. But to add on to it, it was also a problem to collect data, and I mean, my opinion was we were actually putting our people at risk. And I remember one day we're with Nick at the office, and the sun is setting, and the people who were entering the data on Kobo at the office were sort of had to get on their way home. And at one point, one of them says, "Look, I can't walk out here, or else I'll be killed." I mean, essentially, it's what he told us. And so Nick starts the OCHA car. We get him into the OCHA car. We drive this guy to the BNURCA, which is the UN building. Drop him off there and make sure he gets a cab home. And then you know what happened in Bangui in the succeeding weeks. And it was sort of a foretaste of a very bad story there. But then for us, it also means that there must be a better way of doing assessments than sending out people and entering the data at the office, and maybe remote mobile data collection has something to bring. Going out, collecting your data without boots on the ground may have a lot of value in some situations, and I think that was one thing that I brought back from Bangui when we were out there most recently. So I'm going to tell you about the MVAN project, which is remote mobile data collection in a variety of ways. We're implementing a pilot project using voice right now in Eastern DR Congo and Somalia. We're testing this way of running our surveys for a few reasons that I'll detail later, but one of them is certainly security of the people who collect the information. Number two is the speed with which we can gather that information, and number three is the cost. And I think once we figure out what works and what doesn't, we will be going straight into what Nick was saying about how do you conceive of integration with the rest of the processes that we have for food security analysis. So what are we testing right now? Three things essentially. We've got the live calls. That means an operator sitting in a location not too far from where a population of interest is, calling up these people on a regular basis and asking the survey questions that we have. And if you have an operator, you're pretty flexible. That means you're able to ask essentially the same questions that you have on a paper survey because you have that human element there. We're also testing text message. This is an automated way of doing our surveys, as well as interactive voice response, which are the robocalls. If you've ever been called with someone asking you to press 1 to talk to a human being, that's what we're trying to do in these contexts. Now, in terms of integration with our systems and with tools such as ODK or Kobo Toolbox, you certainly have huge opportunities for all three. You think the operator could be entering the data during the live call, or the text message could originate from a piece of software like ODK and the data captured and stored there, as well as with interactive voice response. The rationale for why we do remote data collection is outlined here. You do see that you have huge advantages in terms of time, cost, and security that I've just outlined to you. You might have seen this slide this morning, those of you who were with the Speed Geeking with me. But I'd like to spend a bit more time on how the project works. I think an idea of the workflow is important here. Now we have at the top the survey respondents. Now they're contacted either by IVR or by SMS or from a call placed by an operator. What we need is a telephone gateway in order to process the calls, and that can be either a GSM modem based in, again, a remote field location, or simply Skype. VoIP has a lot of advantages, and in fact, we're able to get good sounding phone calls to a lot of remote locations in the world. The only issue might be, to some extent, cost. Now, the way or robocalls work is that they run on Verbois, a piece of software called Verbois. This is developed by Instead, which is a nonprofit developing this type of solution for the humanitarian world. The IVR calls are placed from a regular laptop, the laptop that you all use in this room, connected to a 2-channel modem, so a basic modem that, well, not that basic. It costs about between 1,000 and 2,000 euros. But that's your setup to place. You can place a few hundred calls a day if you need to with that setup, and that's really plenty to get information from the field. it works with the data aggregation backend. We were hoping to use something like ODK Voice, but that's not been developed. So we are using the Vervoice backend. The other way we run the project is through a call center with a live person placing calls and entering data live into a database. This is the essentially a WFP version of ODK, and this information is easily analyzed. It's similar to what we usually have in face-to-face processes, and that's fed into the humanitarian decision-making process. The data that we've generated using voice or IVR or SMS data collection, we are sharing it with our decision makers after a heavy filter. We want to make sure we have good quality data to share, but it's only by doing that we understand what we need to work on and what we need to integrate in order to build that into our systems at a later stage. Now, our current partners, we work now on the left side of the slide with the Humanitarian Innovation Fund and USAID. I mentioned the role of Instead as the provider, the IVR software that sends out the questions and captures the answers from the people that we're calling. GeoPol is a private company that allows us to do the SMS blasts in the places where we work. Then we have a collaboration from the Nielsen Company, a research and information firm, and Tulane University. The issue that you will see immediately in terms of integration is we're actually using a few different systems to achieve our objectives. The other difficulty we have is that Instead develops Linux software. We are a Windows organization at WFP. How do you do that? Maybe we're going back to what I was saying a little earlier in the presentation. We're trying to see if this works, if this is user-friendly, if this is a good way of collecting data. I think once we have the answer to that, we will go back and see, do we need to work with Instead to develop a Windows version of Vervoice? We will go back to our colleagues at GeoPol to see if we can integrate their platform with ours and therefore have this seamless system that allows us to collect the data in exactly the way we want it. But for now, we're testing, we're finding out what works, and that's really the objective. This shows you the products you have with the voice calls, higher frequency information. This goes all the way to July. I do think we have an additional round now. But this illustrates the added value of remote data collection in terms of providing higher frequency of information for decision makers. It's very rare that in food security circles you'd be able to have monthly data on a population of interest like IDPs in a camp. We are able to generate that now. We have the same graph for Somalia as well. And the challenge for us would be to have this type of information available for the 50 or so countries where WFP has operations, and to enable this to be rolled out and scaled where we need it to. The other important insight I wanted to share with the group was about what we've learned in terms of response rates and how to do it. So there's a lot we have to work on in order to achieve reasonable response rates. The response rates here are calculated as a percentage of the people who signed up for the surveys in the first place. So it's about 300 per location, 300 households. And we're able to do between 200 and 250 households on any given month, which is a sufficient sample for us to be able to detect a meaningful change in these IDP locations. And you do see that we have response rates that have varied between 50 and 75%. The 45 here in DR Congo in round one was due to user friendliness issues that we resolved the following month. Essentially, the problems that we had in Congo the first month were ensuring, first off, we had to distribute phones to the people we call. Number two, we had to provide some training for people to understand how to use a phone. For many people, it was the first phone they ever owned. Number three, we also had to provide access to electricity. So a lot of prerequisites had to be taken care of during that first round, but you do see that subsequently response rates rose and stayed at satisfactory levels. Now, once we figured out and written the book on how to collect data in this way, we will be able to look at how this fits into or broader data architecture at WFP. It's interesting that in here you see the contrast with Somalia. Somalia was an environment where essentially 80% of the households have cell phones already. We didn't have to go through all the hoops we experienced in the case of Congo to generate good data, and that's an important insight. It's context specific. It's about who your target is, who your audience is, how user-friendly your system would be, and that just has a huge influence on how your project will end up. This next slide does show a comparison between the achievement of the MVAM project. This is in the blue box on the right, with response rates varying between 50 and 75%, as I mentioned. What's interesting is to see that in eastern DR Congo and central Somalia, these are very vulnerable communities, conflict-affected, some of the most vulnerable communities in the world. We were able to get response rates comparable to, I would say, quieter areas of Africa and Latin America. If you see the response rates that were achieved in Tanzania, South Sudan, this was urban South Sudan before the war, so it was calmer than it is now, certainly, and also Latin America. So this shows that there is some promise, and therefore we do need to start thinking quite clearly about how we would integrate these solutions into something like ODK, into something like, we were talking with Nick, is there a way of getting SMS data collection into Kobo at some point? But these are exactly the questions that are now raised by the project. So what are our plans? So we were clearly working much more with voice in a first stage with the grant from the Humanitarian Innovation Fund. We're now trying to test out different ways of collecting data remotely, so either by calling people up, by SMS, the automated voice, and we need to continue capturing evidence. And it's by capturing the evidence, by analyzing it, and by knowing what works in what context that we will be able to make the decisions on investments. I'm not ready to recommend to my managers that we're going to have to spend $200,000 or $300,000 on improvements to Kobo or ODK unless we really know what we're looking for. So right now it's all about testing and seeing what works, and then having a clear path forward in the medium term. We're also testing this right now in Ebola. I think this is going to be a very interesting use case. We want to see whether remote mobile data collection can be used for a quick onset emergency. Maybe Ebola isn't really in that situation, but right now we are collecting information by SMS, very soon by IVR in the 3 countries that are affected by the crisis. This will show us how this can actually contribute to the emergencies that we all work on, and again guide us. And the learning component in the MVAM for Ebola will let us make better decisions in terms of near-term investments. So that's all I have for you today. If you want to know a bit more about the project and where we're headed, we have a monthly blog, a few other resources here on the slide. Thank you for your attention.